Hello, Marissa. How are you?
Hi, I'm well, thank you.
I'm
And yourself?
very nice to see you. It's my first time meeting you today, Marissa, and I wanted to talk to you because your work is really interesting. It's an area that I don't personally work in, but I know a lot of my clients ask me about many of the things that you do, and we're going to be talking about your work, which is related to record suspensions. So that's really important. But before we get into what you do, if you can just introduce yourself to my audience, please.
hmm yeah, my name's Marisa Cutter, and I oversee the agency Pardon Partners, located in Toronto, in the West End. I've been doing this work for 25 years. Um, I sort of fell into it. I mean, I do have a background in criminal justice and went to school for counseling and therapy. But a friend was getting his pardon when we were in our early 20s, and I went along so he could make a payment on his file. And I met the program director there and found this was the kind of work that I would be interested
Mhm.
in. After previously working with the young offenders in open custody and people on parole in halfway houses. So I just fell into it. I worked for that agency for 18 years before launching Pardon Partners in 2019 formally.
And you mentioned that you're located in Toronto, but your work is not only or restricted to people who live in Toronto or in Ontario, correct?
Right. So the pardon or record suspension is available for offenses or convictions anywhere in Canada.
Hmm.
We have clients in every province. We have clients all around the world, really, people that have were in trouble when they were in Canada, whether visiting on vacation or living here previously and possibly deported, or have just moved on to another life somewhere else. So yeah, we can help anybody with a criminal record in Canada.
Okay, so then explain to us then what is the process? Because you help people who have a conviction and who are trying to have it suspended. They want to get rid of the conviction. So how does that work? If you can explain to us how it starts and then the process itself of what people should do, and maybe we can also get into why it's important, the various areas of a person's life that are affected by a conviction.
Sure. Yeah, so I think there's a misconception that pardons no longer exist. Um, they do under the former legislation. Under current legislation, the term is record suspension.
Mhm.
So the applications differ slightly around criteria, but ultimately, under current legislation, for any convictions that have happened after March 2012, the wait period is 5 years for summary convictions and 10 years for indictable convictions. That's after the punishment has been satisfied. Um, so the application requires documents from each level of government, and it's a step-by-step process. So we need one document before we move on to the next stage, so that we can confirm all convictions are showing up at the federal level, ordering court records at the provincial level to confirm eligibility, and then at the local level to ensure there's no new information before the courts that hasn't made it up to the federal level yet.
Mhm.
So we process each of those documents, we order the documents, obtain them, and process them. And throughout that, we learn new information that we update our clients with at each stage. So they know what's going on, progress is being made, and they can feel like they're in the loop throughout.
So you do the application on behalf of the client, right? Like for the record suspension.
We do. A couple of things fall on the client. Like the first step is getting fingerprinting done. And we typically send people to private agencies just for comfort. They're located across the country. If they're in rural areas, they might not have that opportunity, so they would go to their local police and have digital fingerprinting done. That's then forwarded to the RCMP to pull the federal CPIC record.
Hmm.
That's
And
stage one.
Marissa, how long does this whole process take?
hmm Yeah, I mean, it's typically how long and how much is what
Yeah,
people need to
yeah,
know. And unfortunately, most people are in an urgent situation when they
yeah,
contact us. So time is of the essence. And unfortunately, that's not how this process works. As mentioned, it's a step-by-step process.
yeah.
So for us to collect all of the documents from the three levels of government will typically take anywhere from 2 to 5 months.
To
Then,
collect the
yeah, yeah,
wow.
because it's step by step. So you can't move on to the next step until you've completed the previous. So the that portion of it is 2 months on a breezy
Yeah.
application, five
When things are
months,
going well, yeah.
and then sometimes it can take longer when
Longer.
courts are backed up and they don't have the staffing available to pull the records that are required. So we do fall into that. I mean, we have follow-up procedures where we can manage client expectations and, you know, stay on top of the courts. Then, when the application's ready to submit, we expect the next stage, we update the client with the next stage, and now it's with the government's hands for decision making. With new legislation back in 2012, they are required, the governing body is called the Parole Board of Canada.
Hmm.
So the Parole Board of Canada is required to make a decision for summary only convictions within 6 months and with indictable convictions, 12 months. So start to
A
finish,
whole year
it can take a
to
year
make a
to a year and a
decision?
half. Well, for the indictable convictions
Yeah.
only. Yeah.
6 months if it's a summary conviction, and a year if it's by indictment.
hmm
That's so long.
It is. They're dealing with, thousands of applications every year, and they need to make contact with the different government, different levels of government to make sure everything's accurate, to make sure there's nothing new under investigation. A lot
Because
of
that would obviously have an impact. Like if there are new charges, if they learn that there are new charges, that would either delay or maybe just derail the whole thing, I guess, the application.
Well, that's a really good question. So, when the parole board is processing the application, we will sometimes get a letter back. We call it a proposed to deny.
Hmm.
And so they found new information, or more often, we'll see information listed by the local police
Yeah,
agency about bylaw infraction stuff, non-convictions. And so if there's a non-conviction after the conviction that they're applying for a pardon for,
yeah.
that will come into question under good conduct. So it doesn't affect eligibility,
Okay.
but the individual has an opportunity to explain themselves because why were the police involved in your life?
Yeah. Again, yeah.
Yeah. So, and then, bylaw infraction stuff, speeding tickets, they look
What about peace
into
bonds and
absolutely. Yeah.
okay, and
Peace bond.
discharges? Would that fall discharge?
Discharge, absolutely. So the list of non-convictions, including withdrawn, dismissed, acquitted, peace bond, stayed, conditional, or absolute discharges, those will all get questioned. And the conditional discharge, like there's a wait period of
Yes,
3 years.
3 years.
So we
Yeah.
wouldn't submit with that happening after the conviction, after 1 year, because they haven't met that criteria yet.
Hmm.
hmm
Uh,
So the individual has an opportunity then to provide a written explanation, what happened, why it happened, and why it's not going to happen again. And they can also include supporting documents like character references or like in a peace bond situation where there was likely a domestic situation.
yeah.
Um, Often there's like anger management or the PARS program as part of the plea. So proof of like a certificate of completion would be helpful in that scenario to include when we're responding to the proposed to deny.
And do they look at like all the court documents? Like I know you mentioned that they will give the person the opportunity to explain, but will they actually go deeper and look?
Oh, cross-reference, like, is this a legitimate explanation?
Yeah, or maybe like will they get in touch with the lawyer or will they get in touch with the court system and or the Crown office? Like how far do they go to verify the post-conviction uh,
Mhm.
uh,
They'll usually
process?
contact the arresting police agency and
Okay.
they'll want to cross-reference with police reports. So if you explain, I had a fight with my wife and we were just yelling at each other and the neighbors called the police. But then the police reports say the wife was brought into the hospital with injuries
Yeah.
but then didn't want to go through the court process. So then there was a peace bond issued. Then, yeah, that's going to play a role in whether
Yeah.
you get a pardon or not because
It's more
you're not being
serious. Yeah.
honest. Well, you're
Yeah.
not being honest.
Yeah.
So if you're honest and you show remorse and take accountability for what's happened, they're much more willing to approve the application. So that's an important piece for sure.
And obviously, I'm guessing here, Marissa, if there is a another conviction post the conviction that they're trying to get suspended, that could possibly they can their
Derail.
application will be denied, right? Like,
Yeah, so more often than not, it happens in the early stages before the application's gone to Ottawa. But we do receive correspondence from both the Canadian government or if we're working on a US waiver application from the US government, with them notifying us that there's new information before the courts
yeah.
that the client hasn't told us about yet. So then we have to bring it to their attention. This is a problem and we need to deal with it. And you need to be upfront with us about what's going on so that we can help you.
And Marissa, so some of the there, I think many of the areas that are affected by a conviction are people already know about them, but let's just talk a little bit more because that's really the main reason why people want these convictions to go away. It's because they have a very heavy impact on their lives. So if we can talk about the main areas, but there are also some other areas of their lives that are affected that people may not really know about. So let's start with the common ones, the big ones.
Right. I mean, employment is huge.
Yeah.
If you are looking for employment, like a criminal record question will typically be on the application or it will come up during interviews. And, if there's multiple candidates, it's an easy way for this one to
Yeah.
get pushed off. Um, and then in like certain industries require licensing to be updated on a regular basis, like real estate agent.
Professionals or
Mhm.
yeah.
Right. And so year to year, if something new comes up, that's
Yeah.
going to obviously come into question. If you have been with the company for a period of time and they're pleased with your performance, and also depending on the nature of the
Yeah.
offense, I'll tell you, drinking and driving is the most common offense we deal with.
Hmm.
Um, so if it's not going to affect your role and you've taken the initiative to start the pardon and shown them like I'm handling my personal matters. It hopefully won't affect you the same way, but a lot of people are looking for work right now. Like there's been a lot of cuts in a lot of big industries, and so it's enormously detrimental for employment searching. The second biggest one is travel. So whether that's for pleasure, business, people want a vacation.
Yeah.
And currently it's only the US that we share information with, or anywhere governed by the US. So that's also Puerto Rico, Guam, obviously Hawaii. Um, So
Um,
because, yeah,
Sorry,
sorry.
just because you mentioned that we share information with the US, do you mind telling us the extent of the information that is shared with the US? Because that's something that clients sometimes want to know is that, well, how much do the Canadian police forces reveal to the US about that person?
So it's Canadian Border Services Agency and
Yes.
U.S. Customs and Border
CBSA, yeah.
Protection,
Hmm.
and yeah, and then U.S. Customs and Border Protection. So they have access to each other's FBI and RCMP database. So it's at the federal level.
The full
Um,
RCMP, RCMP. Okay, wow.
CPIC, the Canadian Police Information Center, CPIC. So people will sometimes skate by for a number of years. Like I hear from business travelers, I've been going for 10 years monthly for meetings, and this one time changes everything. So you get refused entry, and now you're logged in their system. They download your record from the Canadian, from CPIC, and you're considered inadmissible and will require a US waiver going forward anytime you want to visit the US. Um, I think you asked one other piece to that, but they get the nationwide criminal record and they have
Right.
access to
So,
it. What I will say,
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
what I will say is, years ago, people would show up at an international airport in Canada to leave for the US, and they weren't found out until they arrived at their destination and then would be sent back. They updated their systems, I mean, a number of years ago. So
Yeah.
now the immigration process happens in,
Yeah, because
Pearson,
that's
as an
brutal.
example.
Yeah, that's
And you're
brutal.
told you're not going anywhere,
Yeah.
pulled into secondary, questioned extensively. There's an interview process, and then you can withdraw your application to enter, but ultimately it's the same outcome. You need a waiver going forward from then on. Um, One other piece to that. So it's just the US currently, but Europe, the third or 29 different European Union countries, they're implementing this new visa program. It's called ETIAS, ETAIS. It was supposed to roll out early 2025. There have been delays, but it's now forecasted to roll out Q4 2006 or possibly Q1 2027.
Hmm.
And there's criminal record questions on it. So it's, there's this lingering thought that with time, are we going to be sharing information
Well, that
with
was
the
what
EU as
that's the
well?
question that I was going to ask you. So that are they going to be sharing the information with them as well? Because that's a lot of different nations having a lot of information about a Canadian citizen. And the question is like, why do they need to know all of that about
Hmm. Hmm.
Canadians?
Hmm. Well, it'll go both ways, right? So
Yeah.
The Canadian government won't let an American with an
Yeah.
American record in. Um, yeah, well, I don't know. The world is becoming this global.
But
Um,
I do want to go back a bit on that point where you said that there's this information sharing and that they have access to the CPIC records. So they can also see if there were charges that were withdrawn and because that what we can I mean, I'm thinking of what I can see when I'm getting disclosure and a criminal record. Like I see the entries for sure, I can see the convictions, but I can also sometimes see what was withdrawn, what was stayed. So they can see all of that. And can that be problematic for a person if they see that it's not?
well, in that scenario, um, so an individual is planning US travel
Yeah.
and either currently before the courts or a non-conviction. So the US doesn't have, years ago, the CPIC report it had 5 columns, and in the fifth column, it was called restricted distribution. And that's where non-convictions would show up.
Hmm.
Excuse me, fourth column. And so the US can't see restricted distribution,
Okay.
but what they can see is that the individual has an FPS or fingerprint section number listed in CPIC. So they don't know what it is, but they know something's there.
Hmm.
You're absolutely going to get questioned about that. What typically happens is you're going to be interviewed, pulled into secondary and interviewed, and then they're not just going to take your word, but for you to say, the charges were withdrawn, they're going to send you back. So you're, I don't know, temporarily refused entry and expect you to come back with the court information document to confirm the
Hmm.
disposition was in fact withdrawn. Now, all of that is now in their database. They will let you enter, but you're going to get questioned over and over again. So it's a nightmare to deal with. The goal is stay out of the US until it's gone, and then you should have no trouble going forward.
But is it really gone?
Okay. The formerly the pardon, currently the record suspension, which for clarification, there's a lot of misconception around there's no such thing as a pardon anymore. There is for convictions that happen prior to the new legislation, June 2010 through March 2012. So individuals with convictions prior to 2010 still apply for a pardon, and the wait periods are still 3 and 5 years.
Hmm.
That only really plays a role if, say, somebody paid a fine late. So then their eligibility has to be recalculated based on when the fine was paid, and then there's a 3 year or 5 year wait.
Yeah.
So I just went off on a tangent there. Bring me back.
Does
The
it ever really go away?
Okay. The records are sealed, and there's no reason for it to come up again. So I often give the example, like you could possibly go and work for the police that charged you years ago. Because that's the whole purpose of the pardon. It is not, it's so that you can move on with your life
Yeah.
and this is not hanging over your head.
Yeah.
Now, that said, if you were to be charged again, the arresting police notify the RCMP, and then there's a log saying, charges before the court. And then the RCMP, there's something that will trigger, oh, there's a pardon. They don't know what it is, but then they will notify the parole board, this person's been charged again. And then the individual will receive correspondence in the mail from the parole board saying, we know you're in trouble again. And you're no longer considered a law-abiding citizen, so you need to explain yourself and you have 90 days to do so. So if charges are withdrawn, then there's not there's not going to be a strong case for the pardon to be revoked, but if there's new convictions, there will be.
Yeah.
So now they're starting all over again and applying for two or more convictions at that point.
All right.
The
Yeah.
one caveat is weapons prohibitions. And I'm
Okay.
very passionate about this. It's been so trying over the years because we're the ones having to tell people this is never going away. Um,
The weapons prohibition.
yeah, so it's frustrating because we've done an analysis. Like this sort of started to come up a lot in 2021 to the point the parole board added a paragraph at the bottom of the cover page of the pardon that says weapons prohibitions do not get eliminated, making people aware all the criminal record details are sealed, but this weapons prohibition stays.
And why?
And that's an obvious red flag.
Yeah.
Well, there's two different kinds. There's under section 110, it's called discretionary,
Hmm.
and under section
Oh,
109, it's
yes.
mandatory. So the mandatory ones never go away. We follow this closely with all of our clients, and I'll just stop there and say, when we did an analysis years ago, about 35% of clients had a weapons prohibition. 90% of those never had a weapon as part of their offense. And so it ranges from a simple assault
Yeah.
to criminal harassment to um, most common is trafficking narcotics. That one almost always gets a weapons prohibition, even when there was no weapon involved. And so, because we find it so frustrating to have to give this news to people, I wrote an article in the Criminal Lawyers magazine in October 2016 asking lawyers to not accept these and wherever possible because it's a life sentence. Um, so circling back to the parole board, so they added this paragraph to explain this isn't going away. And then few months later, within a 12-month period, they added a second paragraph on the second page of the pardon, offering clemency, a second application to request the weapons prohibition be lifted. And we thought this was so promising, but let's dig in. So staff went through the application
Yeah.
to understand it. Is this a service we're going to offer? How can we assist clients? So the criteria is very challenging to meet. We did a walkthrough so that we could guide our clients at no cost. And we've not had a huge number want to go through with it. But those that have, it's not looking very promising. So, two that I can think of offhand, I would have believed were great candidates and had valid reasons to have this removed. So one woman's application has been with the clemency division of the pro board for 4 years now, and they have told her that it could be 5 to 7 years before a decision's made.
That's only for the weapons prohibition,
Hmm. Hmm.
not for the record suspension.
Right, right,
So,
separate.
okay. So the person can have their record suspended, but still deal with a weapons prohibition. That's still there, and
Lingering.
that's never going to go away. Now, so is there a different impact that the weapons prohibition on its own will have on the individual's life as opposed to the conviction?
Well, when you think of it, they go hand in hand. So it doesn't matter that there's no criminal record. The weapons prohibition tells whoever's doing the criminal record check, like something happened.
Right. No, I get
So,
that. But I'm
uh,
thinking like in terms of travel or employment. Like if a person
yeah.
is applying,
Mhm.
so if they're asked if they have ever been convicted, and they do have a conviction, so sure, they're going to say that. But what if there is no conviction, but there's a so what's the answer to that question?
So a couple scenarios that I can think of. One individual, like a law firm, sent him to us. He already had his pardon approved before he met us, but he had this lingering weapons prohibition, and it was
Right.
causing trouble because he worked for the school board in
Hmm.
custodial services. And I can't recall, but I feel like it was a domestic situation. There was no weapon involved. And him and his wife were happily married. They had,
Oh no, and they got back together. Yeah.
yeah, they had a period of time
Yeah.
where things were rocky, but
Oh.
they made their way through.
Mhm.
And the school board, he'd been working for them for 15 years, and new rules were in place. And this weapons prohibition under
Came.
Section 109 was still there. So he does a criminal record check, no criminal record, but you have
Yeah.
a weapons prohibition. Well, that sounds pretty serious. And why do you have that? Oh, because I used to have a record. So now you have to disclose that you had a record. So the whole point of the pardon becomes null and void. It's frustrating. And then when you ask about travel, so US Customs and Border Protection, I mean, they are tough. So if they see anything, like they see you have a fingerprint section number, but no charges withdrawn, they're still going to harass you.
Hmm.
And if you have a weapons prohibition, even though they're much more lenient around weapons there than we are here, it's an automatic red flag. And they're going to pull you into secondary, and they're going to force you to go and get your records to prove to them what it's connected to. And the most common one, as mentioned, is trafficking. And the US hates drugs. So immediately, even though you got your pardon, you have no record, but you have a weapons prohibition, you now have to do a US waiver for the rest of your life. So when we ask up front during a discovery call, when they tell us specific offenses, was there possibly a weapons prohibition? Because this will dictate which application based on your goals is appropriate for you. Um, so some people, even though they may never have been refused entry to the US, but they're not going to wait out 7 years to hope they get clemency approved
Yeah.
because either they have family in the US or their job requires regular travel, they'll forego the pardon or record suspension and just apply voluntarily for the waiver. Because, 1 year and you're approved versus 7 years with uncertainty.
And is it the same thing as well with the DNA orders? Is that also problematic?
Mm. Hmm.
Because usually
Well,
when there is one, there's the other, uh, very often.
yeah,
So,
that one doesn't come up for us a lot. I mean, I guess it's those that's usually issued around sex offenses, maybe domestic assault.
yeah, and violence
I mean,
offenses.
when somebody's on the sex offender registry, they that never goes away
Yeah,
either. So that's
yeah,
not good. Yeah. And the US are not, I mean, they do approve them. They have a tiered system. And so they base them on like tier one, tier two, tier three. Tier three is they've decided that this particular crime was so heinous, there's never a chance for you to get a
right.
waiver. Whereas a scenario like a relationship gone sour, and I don't know, that's not the best example. Um, hmm.
I don't know, like a bar fight, let's say.
Okay, yeah, if we step away from sex offenses,
Yeah,
sure.
like a bar
Um,
fight, there is violence involved. Sometimes there could be weapons. Someone like pulls
right.
out a knife or something. But I mean, the parties don't know each other, and like,
Yeah, so different, like, there's multiple different assault type charges under the criminal code.
yeah,
So simple
the
assault,
simple, yeah,
simple assault, the US have actually become lenient with in the last few
okay,
years under something new called Chapter 5. So if they refer to the criminal code section number and cross-reference with their records to establish this person is not considered inadmissible. They can come and go.
okay.
It depends who you meet up with, though, too. Like, I don't know. Some of them are flexing their authority and they'll hassle you and stuff. So I would
So
always recommend
that's the discretion of the officer, you mean? Yeah.
yeah, it is up to them ultimately. We would, if we're working on the pardon, we would always order the more detailed court record for the client to keep in their back pocket. You don't volunteer it, but if and when you're questioned, you can explain that, it was one summary offense and under section 266 assault, I understand that I'm not considered inadmissible based on that. And if you're polite and you know what you're talking about, then it should be fine. They just move you along.
Wow. And I mean, that's just for the travel. Like that's really heavy. And it has a very heavy consequences on the person.
Oh, the
Because
waiver is like can be very emotional because I mean, I've been doing this for 25 years, so I've heard thousands of stories, but people have, the whole family preparing for a year in advance to go on their big Disney trip. And maybe they're driving and they get halted at the border and something mom or dad from 25 years ago
yeah,
totally forgot all about it and the trip is canceled. Unless the other parent wants to go alone with them.
yeah,
But nightmare.
I
And,
know.
people heading down on their honeymoon or it's a boys trip and somebody's bachelor party or it's a super important work meeting
Yeah.
and you all of a sudden get told you're not going and now you have to explain to your boss and colleagues that we're all expecting you. So the stories I hear are
So,
yeah.
and those are the two main areas, Marissa. It's employment and travel, but there's also another important area. It's immigration. That's also very heavily impacted by convictions and any kind of involvement, basically, with the criminal justice system. So maybe we can touch a little bit on that area, and then also about because before we started recording, you mentioned that there are some other areas that are not people don't are not really aware of the fact that they can also be impacted. So I really want to get into that as well. But immigration is also very important. If we can
Hmm.
talk a little bit about the process for immigration.
Hmm. Yeah, so it's not going to affect a Canadian citizen,
Hmm.
obviously, but people with status, either a work permit, refugee status, permanent resident. The permanent resident status, you need to reapply for every 5 years. And if there's a new criminal offense on record, that's absolutely going to come into question.
Hmm.
Or, a work permit that's valid for 1 year or 2 years. And when you need to reapply, which you need to do well in advance to ensure there's no lapse in coverage, yeah, it's absolutely going to come into question. And it's hard to say, like the IRCC that manages Canada's immigration have at times become a little bit more lenient, and then at times become really strict with everything. Summary convictions, even charges a conditional or absolute discharge, which is guilty but not convicted. When that stuff comes up.
Peace bonds, I know, are usually less problematic from immigration. I mean, that's the information that I get usually from immigration lawyers, that a peace bond is usually the outcome that we try to uh, go for if we want to resolve a case.
hmm hmm Yeah, so I mean, it can start as just interviews and warnings and turn into potential deportation.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so we deal with that all the time. Whether somebody is in initial stages or, I mean, best case scenario, people contact us. It often happens people contact us because they want to apply for citizenship. Their permanent resident status is going to expire within the next year and a half, and they're gearing up to become a citizen. And they recognize the criminal record is going to come into question. So a year and a half in advance is great because that'll allow enough time to get the pardon. And if you've met those requirements and that part of the federal government has established you meet rehabilitative measures to be granted a record suspension or pardon, then it'll be smooth sailing for your citizenship
Yeah.
application. But we also have a number of people that don't act proactively and contact us when, they're talking about me leaving next week. Um, so in that scenario, it's still best. Like if the goal is to come back to Canada, because I assume you've created some life here,
Yeah.
the goal is still to get started, even if you aren't eligible for another 3 or 4 years, because it's that much easier to get started when you're still here by just as simple as going to do the
Hmm.
fingerprint. And then once, like if, worst case, they get deported, then we can continue our work. And we do about 65% of it in advance of eligibility so that the last time sensitive step we can do just a couple months before the eligibility date. Everything's good to go. And after seeing the massive legislative changes that took place and impacted so many people back in 2010 through 12, I mean, it's just a no-brainer, in my opinion, that you always start well in advance. Like anything in life that's
Yeah.
important to you, you're proactive. So when people are not eligible for three more years, if it's on your mind, it's telling you, take action on this
Yeah.
because something's going to come up. Something's going to come up, and you're going to wish you had done it sooner.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask you, Marissa, is there a difference between whether the person is a youth or an adult, or if it's a youth record as opposed to an adult record?
Good question. So if it's only a youth record, it will automatically get purged. It doesn't happen the minute you turn 18. There's still sort of the eligibility calculations where if you had 2 years probation from the age of 17, that ends at 19 years old. And then there's like either a 3 or 5 year wait before the records are purged.
Hmm.
Um, However, youth records, so if, as an example, if somebody was charged at 17,
Yes.
2 years probation, and then they finish probation at 19, but they get charged again at 19,
Hmm.
the youth record gets locked into the adult record.
Yeah.
So now they have two offenses to get a pardon for.
Oh, wow. So it becomes more complicated if the youth continues to be involved in the criminal justice system as an adult. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. But
Yeah.
if it's,
I use pardon and record suspension interchangeably because it's all the same to us. Um, the same outcome ultimately, but all the finer details differ slightly.
All right. And what are some of the other areas that people are not necessarily aware of that can be impacted by having a criminal record and conviction? So let's talk about that, Marissa. I thought that was really interesting.
Hmm. Um, Housing is one. So a lot of rental applications, a lot of landlords will
Yeah.
expect a criminal record check. Um, and then I've had a handful of people contact me in the final stages of a mortgage application. It sounds like there's only a couple banks that do it. It's not at all five banks, but they have a criminal record component to the mortgage application. So that's pretty huge. Volunteering is another big one.
Hmm.
So young people to get into university nowadays, they have to do a number of volunteer hours. And there's also like, retired people who just want to get out and have a sense of purpose to volunteer in their community. And something that happened 40 years
Yeah.
ago, they forgot all about. And that, um, I want to say reduces their chances, but eliminates their chances of being able to volunteer
Yeah.
until they get rid of it. Um, yeah. So, what other areas? I mean, there's really niche things, but nothing's coming to mind right now. It affects every aspect of your life, even just peace of mind. Like the simplicity of going through a traffic stop or like a drinking and driving program. Um, if you've had a past offense, you're going to get treated differently because the police are going to judge you. They're going to wonder, through a drinking and driving setup, they're going to wonder, like, especially if maybe you had a drinking and driving offense 10 years ago,
Hmm.
they're going to grill you more than they would the next person because you have a record still on file.
Yeah, unfortunately. And the thing is, like the record, especially the one that they're checking, as you mentioned, on the roadside, they're not going to necessarily see right away the background, the circumstances. All they're going to see is that, well, there is a drinking and driving, the sentence, and,
Yeah. So an
any
immediate
probation.
judgment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, they won't have all that information about all the mitigating factors that were involved in the case, or, like that was just a one-off thing. And so it's really harsh. I mean, people are getting judged by these few sentences that they see on a system.
That
But
could that could ultimately have been 10 years ago.
yeah.
So, I mean, a lifetime really in personal growth and
I know,
yeah.
which is so unfair. I mean, especially if the person has changed and has moved on, and that no longer reflects, and especially impaired driving. I mean, we know that many of these charges, the high season is around the holiday season. So they're coming out of a party where they drank, and it's not because they're alcoholics. Sometimes it's just a one-off,
The
bad
most
judgment.
Yeah, I mean, that's typically what we hear from people. I went to the company Christmas party.
Yeah,
I had three glasses of wine. I had dinner. I was there 6 hours. By the end of the night, I felt okay to drive.
yeah.
And then they get a over 80 milligrams alcohol charge in the end. Once people don't recognize this one. I can think of a client years ago. He lived in Durham region, came downtown, well, drove from his house to the GO train, and then took the GO train into the city to the company Christmas party, went back on the GO train, and then called a taxi. He sat in his car, and it was,
Yeah.
December, cold, turned the car on for a bit of heat, care and control.
No,
So
yeah.
he had care of the vehicle and control of the keys and yeah, drinking and driving offense.
That's
And
so
he did
unfortunate.
everything right.
Yeah.
He did everything right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, like
Yeah.
that really is frustrating. And then he has to go through the same process as someone who's convicted of a
Who
crime
was
where the
who was deliberate, like knew full well they should not
yeah,
have been driving.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's really sad. I don't think that we mentioned because one of the things that people will want to know is how much does it cost them, Marissa?
Mhm.
If they want information about the pricing, if it's going to be expensive. So, what can you tell us about the prices that you guys charge for
Yeah.
someone who wants to apply through your agency to have their records suspended?
hmm We post our fees on our website for transparency.
Hmm.
I don't like the idea of having to go through a sales call just to find out how much it's going to cost. So we just want to be transparent and upfront. Um, so for the pardon slash record suspension, it's $889 plus tax. US waiver is 924 plus tax, and the rehabilitation application for individuals outside of Canada that want to come to Canada but have a criminal record somewhere else, 948 USD plus tax. There are government fees that are not included. The fingerprinting, which ranges from 50 to 90 bucks. The pardon at the end, you pay $50 to the federal government. The US waiver is a big one, though. The US waiver, our fee is the 924 plus tax.
Hmm.
And then when we submit the application, the US government fee is 1100 USD. It was 595 for as far back as I can remember, probably 20 years. And April 1st, 2024, they jacked it by double, which is pretty significant because I mean, with our exchange rate, that's like 50,
Yeah.
more than 1,500 bucks. So yeah, we prepare people up in advance for that. And then all of our fees, we offer a payment plan. So to make it more manageable.
Yeah, so they don't have to pay the whole amount right away. They can pay
Mhm.
in smaller payments.
Yeah, we do monthly installments.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the whole application, just again, it can take some time, right? Like from start to finish, because it remains until there is an actual decision, right? For
Mhm.
so that can take up to a year and more.
Yeah, like ballpark, every situation can be slightly different based on where you went to court, nature of the offense, things like that. Ballpark, the pardon is a year to a year and a
A
half.
year to a
So
year
it's,
and a half.
I mean, sometimes we breeze through certain applications and then the parole board with one summary conviction, often drinking and driving, we do see them push those ones faster. And so what they're allowed, or they're entitled to 6 months to make a decision on that. Sometimes we see them come back after 2 months, and it's a
Okay.
lovely surprise for
Yeah.
everybody. But we can't obviously promise that because
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
so yeah, you definitely want to be proactive about these things. The waiver, the US waiver. So again, it would take us a few months to put the all the official documents and the supporting documents together, submit the application. The US website says they take 9 to 12 months. We monitor their processing times very closely to be most accurate for our clients. We're currently seeing them taking 10 to 11 months, probably pushing on the 11-month side.
And that's
So
almost a year. Yeah.
yeah. So, if you want to go to the US, you need to plan. Well, either if you whether you need a waiver or a pardon, you need to be proactive and looking at this a year in advance.
I guess that's the key word then for these applications for anyone who's watching and who wants to apply, that they need to, like, if they think that they need to apply, that they need to be proactive and act as soon as possible because it is a lengthy process. It's not something that can be done in a week or two or in a few months. So it can take up to a year and
Mhm.
sometimes more.
And just to add on to that, there's no applying too soon. There's no contacting us because we can, through a discovery call, we can get a pretty close idea to when you're going to be eligible. And if time is on your side, then it's best to start well in advance, a
Yeah.
couple of years in advance, and we'll do 65, 70% of the work. We'll have an exact date to look forward to. If questions come up over the next 3 years while you're waiting on eligibility through work, through travel, through volunteering, you want to volunteer at for your kids' sports teams. These are all questions that you're going to want the support from an agency like Pardon
Hmm.
Partners.
Hmm.
Mhm.
All right. Well, Marissa, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to explain to us your work. I certainly will be referring clients to you because like I said at the beginning of this interview, I get a lot of clients who ask about what happens if they already have a conviction or if ever there is one, what will happen afterwards. So thank you so much for explaining many of these areas that people don't necessarily know much about or that are not very clear in people's minds. And for anyone who is looking for help with that, Marisa Cutter, I know on the screen your name is Franklin, but it's Marisa Cutter who can help you with that. Thank you again so much.
My pleasure. I want people to be educated around what to expect and how to navigate the whole system, whether it be clients, other lawyers. By all means, reach out. Happy to answer questions that are specific to your situation. It's pardonpartners.com.
Thank you so much. And I'll make sure to mention that in the description of this episode so that people can know how to find you and to find your agency. Thank you again, Marissa. It was my
Pleasure.
pleasure.
Take care.